All right, welcome everyone. My name is Shafath Syed and I'm with ServiceNow, and we're going to go ahead and get this webinar started. This is the Live on ServiceNow webinar on HSBC's legal transformation journey with ServiceNow and Deloitte. I am your host, Shafath Syed, and I'm with ServiceNow. This webinar is being recorded. And we'd also like to point out that some of the speakers may talk about future capabilities, and this is our safe harbor statement saying that things may change in the future. We encourage you to catch future webinars here on Live on ServiceNow. You can scan this QR code, and a link will be provided in the chat window. We have some housekeeping items that I'd like to point out to you. Firstly, we will save time at the end of this webinar for a Q&A session. We encourage you to use the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen to post questions. That way we can keep track of them. The chat window tends to scroll, so the Q&A button is the best way to post your questions, and we will address them at the end. This webinar will be available on the community website where you registered for this. So we encourage you to come back and watch this again. And after the event, you'll be prompted to fill out a short survey. And we really ask you to please fill that out so that we can get feedback and hear from you on how we're doing and how we can improve these sessions. Throughout this webinar, the speakers will be talking about a ServiceNow product called ServiceNow Legal Service Delivery, also known as LSD for short. And this product is really designed for the needs of legal departments within corporate legal teams. And it helps drive better business outcomes through efficient legal operations. Now I'd like to introduce the speakers. We have a great team of speakers, starting with Andy Brereton, who is Group Vice President of Legal Operations for ServiceNow, having served similar roles previously at American Express and AIG. Andy and his team oversee the operations of ServiceNow Legal, the legal function, and act as customer zero for the ServiceNow Legal Service Delivery product. Ben Eason is head of legal change and innovation at HSBC. He spent 25 years in the financial industry as a transformational leader at both JP Morgan and Barclays before joining HSBC at the end of 2022. Ben is responsible for strategy and execution of the transformation of HSBC's legal department. And we have Tom Birdseye, who is director in Deloitte's legal management consulting practice and has over 17 years of experience leading transformation in the legal sector, holding leadership roles in law firms, ALSPs, and consulting organizations. Tom manages Deloitte's legal technology consulting team and leads the collaboration with ServiceNow on legal service delivery across EMEA. And with that, I will hand it over to Tom, who will be the moderator for this session.
Thanks very much, Shafar, and thanks, Ben and Andy, for being here. I think typically in this sort of webinar scenario, and I'm sure we've all seen lots of them, you get to hear about a new implementation or the perspective of someone who's been using a product for a long period of time. And I think what's really nice today is that we've got Andy and Ben, two ends of the spectrum. Andy is customer zero and has sort of led development of LSD and used it internally within ServiceNow, and can talk about longer term benefits, whether adoption becomes easy after a period. Ben can tell the story about how a large legal function like that within HSBC sort of gears itself up and starts the process towards making this sort of change. So maybe before we dive into technology, maybe Ben, starting with you and sort of stepping back and saying, well, what do you think about the sort of role of the COO function change within the legal practice? How does that fit in?
It's a really good question, Tom, to kick us off, and thanks for having me here to talk about this topic today. One that I mentioned yesterday is actually one of my favorite topics at the moment. So in terms of what's the role of COO and the change function and the broader legal operations function in vision and technology here is actually I see it as twofold in an organization such as HSBC. One is very much bridging the gap, and what I mean there is that we are a part of a big firm, and bridging the gap between the needs of the legal department to do its job and to do its job well and be a best in class, with the needs of a firm which also has a desire to have similar outcomes, but often speak in very different language and often speak in a very different way. And let's not forget that my role then is very much to make it happen, right? To turn it from a vision into reality. And Tom, if I may, I've got a little bit of a change in position of something that I thought I'd share with everyone, which is, for many years, anyone who's heard me talk has heard me talk about the vision of you're creating a house. You're creating a house with great foundations. You need to do a lot of work and convince people that you need to do a lot of work before the house is built, around the foundations, around how to create something that is going to last for a long time, and all the right things. And right towards the end, you see the house come up, and that's what happens. That's what happens in house building. But I've changed my view. And I've corrected myself, because the more I look at our strategy, the more I look at technology and the future of technology and legal technology, the more I realize that what we're actually trying to do is create a first-class wing of a hotel. And what I mean there is, you can't do something fundamentally different to the rest of the hotel. Your success comes in the success of the whole hotel. Right? I always joke to say you get the benefits of cheaper carpets if everyone's doing the same, right? But what I mean is you need to understand the aims of everywhere. Are you a cheap and cheerful Airbnb, or are you a luxury 5-star hotel? And by having that translation and bridging the gap that I've been talking about becomes a lot more straightforward. And actually making it happen becomes straightforward when everyone across all wings of the hotel is on the same page. And so that vision, everyone in the hotel understanding that vision, and then us making it happen for legal users and as a part of the business, is, for me, what makes a really successful outcome.
Ben, I'm going to rack my brains to try and build on the hotel analogy now. But Andy, first off, buy me some time. Same question in terms of the sort of role of legal ops and how core it is to the legal function success.
Yeah, for sure. Great. Ben and I have talked at length about the hotel, the house. I love it. It's great. It makes total sense to me. So legal operations. When I think back to when I kind of started to work in legal ops at previous companies, legal ops was definitely a thing. It was, it kind of started life as kind of e-billing and managing the finances. And now where we are today, I think it's the best role in legal. When you think of the change that is happening and the change that is coming, we in legal operations are the ones who have the responsibility and the opportunity to help drive that change in the industry. So my vision for legal ops is that we are the drivers of change. We are the ultimate enablers of a legal function working the most efficient way possible. I think it's the business of law. Our general counsel, Russ Elmer, talks to me about that all the time. We are the business team within the legal function. And I can't think of a more exciting time to be in the legal industry, whether you're in the legal operations team, or if you're an attorney or a lawyer or a legal professional who's kind of thinking about legal ops and you want to help that legal operations team. If you are a lawyer or a paralegal or a legal professional, I would really encourage you to play around with the things that legal ops gets involved in, because legal operations is going to be the ultimate force to drive change in the legal industry. And I'll finish by saying this. Folks might sit down, I talk a lot to customers of ServiceNow and to peers in the legal ops space. Folks often say, well, yeah, we've heard this before, right? We've heard that legal's going to change. And has the change really happened? I think we have changed. But let's be really clear, if we don't change, someone is going to change the industry for us, and we should be want to be at the front of that change and lead that change. Because with the advances of technology, the advances of the platform, like things like ServiceNow, it is absolutely different to what we've heard before. So in summary, the business of law, it's so exciting for us. We can be kind of the career elevators and the team to really push on change in the industry. And I couldn't be more excited about that.
And thanks, Andy. And I think, Ben, just picking up on a point you made there about connectors with the business.
Yeah.
I think it sort of pulls in your point as well, Andy. The one trend we see, and maybe the question is, well, why haven't legal functions transformed? We've all been, I think, in our intros listed many tens of years worth of experience. We've all been plugging away at this for a while. Why hasn't it happened? I think part of that is down to a legal perspective that we're different. Legal has to be different. We need different tools. We need specialist tools. And that's true in some cases, but it has meant that legal has been ploughing a sort of lonely furrow in terms of technology. And I think that connection into the business, tools like ServiceNow, we're starting to see the rise of a more sort of enterprise approach to technology. So it's not different tools for different functions. It's maybe more of a common platform with different flavors for different parts of the business. And then look, moving on to technology, and looking at ServiceNow, Andy, as the longest serving user, one of the challenges that we talk to with lots and lots of clients is conceptually our buy work intake. That's great, but what really is the case for change? What are the benefits that I will see over several years? And you must be best placed to give us a view on that.
Yeah, for sure. I think back and I tell a story often. It's day 2 of my job at ServiceNow. I've been here for nearly 5 years now. It was day 2, and the general counsel said, Andy, I don't know what is going on in a certain part of the organization in our legal team, and that's a huge problem. Okay, every year, leading legal operations team like I have the same conversation when it comes to financial planning. It's, Andy, need more headcount. I need more money for outside counsel. We have a conversation. We say, well, why? What's going on? Well, we're really busy. Okay, I get you busy, but what are you busy actually on? Well, I'm not really sure about what I'm busy on. I just know I'm really, really busy. And of course, the teams are busy, right? They're working extremely hard, especially if you're in a kind of growth mindset for a company. But the fact is this, not understanding and not really getting a full picture of the work we're being asked to do as a legal function is where we really need to start. It's not okay anymore to say, I'm busy, but I don't have a good enough detail to be informed in terms of what actually is it that we're working on. Where's the work coming from? Who's doing it? How long does it take? All very simple kind of operational areas to measure, but simply we could not do that without a platform like the legal services delivery. And so that's where we started. And we kind of moved on from there as we went through the releases and the kind of implementation. And yes, Tom, you mentioned the front door, right? It's the intake, the engagement point for legal. That's only one very, very small part of it. You've got to think about the legal professionals doing the work. How can they do their work more efficiently and more quickly? And honestly, how can they have a better experience? And that's where the LSD comes in. Counsel workspace, I can go in, I can see what work is a priority. I can have, a counsel assist. Artificial intelligence technology is helping me, assisting me, insert knowledge articles, insert, previous pieces of advice that may have been given to help me elevate as a legal professional. So it's the ultimate career elevator. And I'll say one more thing and I'll pause. I'm sure Ben wants to chime in. If you are in legal operations or you are a legal professional listening to this and you're kind of thinking, well, is that really going to help me? Or is that really going to happen? Yes, guys, it's happening. Okay. You've seen all sorts of kind of co-pilot technology that's coming down. It's kind of down through releases. It's there. We shouldn't be afraid of it. It's a career elevator. It can make us all work, a lot better. So I'll pause there, Tom. I'm sure Ben's got.
That's perfect. Ben, how does that land for you?
Yeah, I mean, I was nodding all the way through there, and we are at an earlier stage of our deployment. So we haven't realized all those benefits yet. However, those are the benefits that we are looking to realize. What I would add is that, you know, the role of the legal professional is evolving. The demands on the legal professional is evolving, and we have to be able to support that. So the demands coming from our business are for all the things that Andy just listed. However, if you think about it as, therefore, I'm going to count the number of contracts we do and do X, Y, and Z with that data, that is such a tiny component of the capability of having a front door, work intake, workflow through the system, etc. What we are trying to do, and what the demands on our department is that the legal profession is evolving. We're being asked to business partner more rather than do legal stuff. How can we demonstrate that? How can we talk in the same language? So if we're being asked to business partner, then what we're saying there is that increasingly our lawyers are being asked to be on a as part of a deal call with a compliance partner next to them, with a risk partner. They should all be speaking the same language. One technology across everybody really helps that. Being able to then articulate that, do you know what, the demand of this legal service has decreased, but the demand of this legal service is increasing exponentially. Being able to demonstrate that allows us to proactively manage our legal services in the way that Andy described around running it like a business. So, okay, we have more demand in this space. Do we need more training for our lawyers? Do we need to increase the number of lawyers looking at that particular type of business or that particular type of advice? If we're getting that increase in advice, how do we, across all the jurisdictions that we are live in today, see that across the globe and support people in doing that? It's by everyone operating off of one system and one approach in a way that the firm is doing so. So absolutely, all the things that Andy said, and it's understanding the evolution of the expectations on the legal department as a whole, and being able to respond to that and be more live in our response. It's not just about protecting the bank. We'll always need to protect the bank, but it's about business partnering and the way we service our business as well. And then what I would say is the way that something like the legal service delivery module is different is that the firm will say, so workflow is workflow. Why are you different? We know in the legal profession, we know as legal operations experts, there is differences. But if we can talk the same language of something like ServiceNow with the nuances of a legal service delivery module, it works both ways. And then separately, Andy touched on it, but this is a really important point. The user experience needs to be right front and center for everything we do. So whether that is a business person who's interacting with us, whether that is a client interacting with us, whether that is a legal professional, a paralegal, a legal operations expert operating, it needs to be a good user experience. So you have to be able to pick an ecosystem, an approach where you can keep the minimum number of taps through a system, where you can integrate, where you can do all of those things that we expect in our personal life. We expect that to happen on our phone, and you need that to happen on the applications that you're at work as well. So that's where we think differently to say, what am I really responding to when it comes to a tech deployment? I'm responding to the changes in the business demand. I'm responding to a firm-wide strategy, and I'm responding to a real user experience and a module that's really going to cater for the needs of all of those in one go.
Yeah,
I love that. Tom, do you mind if I I'm sorry, I don't want to take us off the talk track. This is so good, Ben. Like, you just teed up. It's great. And there's a question in the chat that I really want to answer because I think it relates to it. So what Ben touched on about the ecosystem. So our vision, the user experience has been, everyone who uses a certain online shopping system, I'm not going to say the name, we use it because it's easy, right? It's not necessarily because it's necessarily always cheaper. It's easy. It's a clicker. It's a few clicks. And our vision for the legal services delivery has always been, but we're getting certainly much closer to it now, has always been to create that seamless, easy, light touch kind of experience. And it's a great question that came in the chat from Alexander around touching upon what I said before about understanding the work we're doing, but how do you do that without creating more burden for busy people? It's such a good question. The biggest learning for us has been, for me personally, has always been change management. And I say that because I'm sure, Ben, you've experienced this in your career. We know how important change management is, but we still didn't quite get it right at the very beginning. And as we've worked through, we've realized that change management is so key. You've got to help folks understand that a change, the use of a technology platform, is going to help them. So we might say the way of engaging legal through email is not very efficient, but the requester might say, yeah, but it's that easy, right? I can just type you an email. I can hit send and I can walk away. So the way we've designed the LSD and what's available to you in the LSD is that front door. You can design it and deploy this extremely easy to select certain options to replace the need of sending 1, 2, 3, or 4 lengthy emails. You understand, the nature of the people who are asking, what work they're asking legal to do. And then fast forward to where we are now, it's way more advanced in that. So say Ben goes into the LSD knows it's Ben, knows that last week Ben requested an NDA, a order form, a master contract, or help from the corporate legal team. It's able to then prompt him and guide him and say, hey, looks like you made a similar request this last week. Is it the same type of request? Yes, no. So Alexander, happy to show you more when we, happy to connect and get into the details, but it's very intuitive and that user experience is key. Sorry, Tom, didn't mean to take us off track.
No, go for it. Passion is good. I suppose two points to draw out. One, the data and the sort of work intake, and that data, just the power of that can't be underestimated. Being able to have, we hear this from clients, being able to have conversations with your internal business customers based on data, it becomes an objective conversation. I can do more of this if you do less of this. It's very, very much more productive, sat on the same side of the desk rather than a business challenge to do more and do it faster and a legal response, but I'm busy. You're overloading me. So it becomes a much more collaborative, creates a more collaborative conversation. And another thing we're hearing is that work intake, capturing the work at point of receipt, is a fabulous enabler for all sorts of other changes. Relying on lawyers to correctly route work through to shared services, maybe drive automation, prompt for self-service. It's very hard if the requests coming into legal come into a number of individuals. If they're coming into a common place and you can automate some of that allocation, it just becomes a force multiplier for all the other initiatives you're trying to employ. So powerful. And maybe moving on, I think. So Ben, having made the decision, you're convinced, with the sort of legal ops background, how do you convince a large, complex, complicated organization like HSBC Legal to go along with you?
Yeah. It's a good. I'm going to make it sound so easy now, right? Because I can give a perfect answer. But look. The reality is, right? If I may, Tom, I'm going to turn the question around a little, right? To say, where have I seen organizations make mistakes in the past to start with, which is you see some awesome tech and you go, let's implement it, right? Or you build a business case at the center on a whiteboard based on things that you think, which are probably gut feel largely right, but you do that at what I call at the center. Or you look for a single solution that's going to solve everything, right? So if instead you turn it round and you start by saying, what's the problem that we want to solve here, right? Is there a problem that we're trying to solve, right? And actually we say, okay, so in the example, look, we spend too much time on email, or we have repeat queries coming in all the time, or actually, they're our problems. When we engage with the business business say we want better transparency of where legal spend goes. Another one that we often got was we don't want to use multiple tools or systems depending on query types. But even to the earlier point that Andy made, we're bored of entering too much data, which means I don't even get to the start point, right? Then if you've sought that out, then what you're actually doing is you're building a business case for collective change, right? You're building a business case for what our business partners want to see in line with our strategy. And actually, more than a tech business case, it helps on process. It helps on aligning what the legal strategy is as a whole, because you start to understand more the demands of your business. And as I say, the way we have to think differently from the ways that we have in the past is you put user experience at the heart of every conversation. The things that we would expect of the apps or ways we operate outside of work should be the same expectation when we come in. Now, there is a challenge there, Tom, right? Yeah, which is we don't always know what all the problems are, right? In an organization like HSBC, due to the size, or we worry that the strategy or technology becomes outdated very quickly, and so you kind of wrangle through these, right? But if you are solving your own genuine problems, your business's genuine problems, and you're talking collectively, then actually maybe it doesn't matter too much, because you're improving all the time, you're optimizing all the time. I do remember, I'm going to share with you, I was once approached to say, why do we make 4 changes a year to our systems? We seem to be getting emails for UAT all the time, and we make changes to the system. And my response was, how often do you have to update your iPhone? Or how much do you have to update your Android? Oh, well, that's different. Is it different, right? Because actually, isn't it much better that we make changes all the time and we move to that environment? So much of this is cultural shift as well. And if we can get people into that operating model of, do you know what, we went live, you didn't like that, we tweaked it a week later. Actually, you didn't like that, we changed that, we've routed that differently. The routing tables we can do on, very, very quickly and change X, Y, and Z. All of a sudden, they're a part of it. And the battle is won so often by people being a part of it. So what I would say is, you have to build in some flex here, right? You've got to be able to course correct, because when you start out, you're not going to get it right. And when you start out, you're doing a lot on a whiteboard, right? And so you're envisaging it. And when it happens, you then go, right, do you know what? Actually, we need to evolve this or do it a bit differently. And as long as we say, that's okay, we're going to make changes as we go. We know what the end state looks like. We know the problems we're trying to say, but we're going to course correct along the way. Actually, the business case stands up for itself. Just got to make sure we actually deliver. We don't want a project that rolls forever. Make sure that you execute. Make sure that people can feel the benefits, and that they feel the benefits that they really, really want. And then, as I say, it really does become a bit of a no-brainer.
Ben, look, I couldn't agree more. You almost every project you start out, you try and come up with a perfect design. Heaven forbid lawyers are more inclined towards coming up with a perfect design in the first place. The only thing you can be certain of at that point is that it will be partially wrong. So building that mindset that we are going to course correct, it's going to be iterative, we'll learn as we go, we're maturing as an organization in terms of what we can digest and what we need. I think if you can embed that mindset, it buys a whole lot of forgiveness.
Yeah, and one thing I'd add, and I can see all 3 of us wanting to chime in, and it's only because it's that kind of healthy debate. But you know what? Sometimes if people haven't been on this journey for any reason, right, trying to explain what good looks like is not easy, right? Because you're explaining something theoretical, right? And so if you go live in a small way and you start to go, look, that's what good looks like. And then people go, oh, I really want to see that. So we went live in November with certain areas. And what I've now seen at our senior level is our senior execs actually using the MI as part of a demo at Exco to give updates. That changes the dynamic, right? It changes the dynamic from I don't think we'll ever need it to how do I get that? Right, and so it's absolutely an evolution. But if we'd have tried to go big bang, we would have got it wrong to start with. So there's definitely an evolution as you go along.
Yeah, just to add, Tom, I think that, and it's very similar to how we approach that kind of iterative approach, right? You, I have that. Our CIO always tells me, Andy, you learn the most about a car when it's on the road, not when it's in the garage being worked on, being tinkered on. Deploy technology, learn as you go along, and that's a little bit uncomfortable for lawyers, right? We like to have everything down to the everything down to perfect in terms of process maps and things like that. I think I'm just going to tie it back to one of the questions in the chat around that. There was a question around how folks can sometimes struggle with core taxonomy and submitters finding the correct form. This is what Ben and I are saying, right? There's no silver bullet from day one. You can't solve all your problems in day one, right? And that's okay. We had a similar challenge. Would have certain forms and intake kind of processes. We iterated, we made them super simple so that it's literally a minute to complete the form or the request. That meant that our reporting might not be as perfect as we wanted it from day 3, day 4, but that was okay. We didn't have any reporting before, so we're making progress. We're iterating and learning as we go. So yeah, great points, Ben.
And Andy, how are you driving adoption? Surely in an organization like ServiceNow, it's your own product. That's a no-brainer, right?
Yeah, enterprise technology company, right? Yeah. So I think it's been a journey, honestly. Yes, there is an absolute expectation that we develop software for companies. Therefore, we should use our own technology, and we do, and we are serious about it. We have a Now on Now initiative, which is ServiceNow on ServiceNow, Now on Now. But again, right, that didn't mean that we could deploy technology that wasn't helpful to people and wasn't easy to use because, you're darn right, we'd hear about it if people don't like it. I always think about kind of adoption in this sense. Really help understand people as to why it's going to help. So if you're engaging legal for help, explain and help folks understand why this is going to help them. Then, and understand the persona. Then it's the legal professional. Understand and help the legal professional understand how this technology is going to help them. I'm very lucky in that we have a general counsel who is very forward thinking and wants to adopt technology to work better. But it's a constant task, right, Tom and Ben? It's not something you can deliver and walk away from. You've got to keep investing in it and keep focusing on as to why it's going to help people. But I promise you that once you start to use a system like the legal services delivery, and once folks understand the value it brings, they will want to get more and more involved in it, especially if you're a legal professional, because it's going to elevate their career. So yeah, that's my thoughts, Tom.
And just the sort of data, again, we come back to data so often, and I think it's not a growing trend. It's an element of the way a legal function is managed that is becoming more and more critical. And what you described there, Ben, is almost a perfect scenario. You've got a bit of push initially to get everyone bought in, get your early champions using the system. If you can start to introduce that data into decision making, into management, committee meetings, that sort of thing, all of a sudden the value of it becomes apparent. And you move from a push, here's a good idea, how about we introduce this tool to improve work intake, to a pull, because they could see the benefit. And as an individual lawyer, Andy, you've got, everyone wants to achieve, competitive people trying to do well. All of a sudden you can see how your team, your performance is perceived. You can start to focus on driving improvement, whereas without any data, we try lots of things. Are we getting any better?
Right. Yeah, I mean, just real quick, you're making assumptions, okay? You're without the data. And I tell a story at a previous employer. There was a technology provider who was offering a solution around certain technology. And we asked the question, how much as a percentage of our work in a week or a month focuses on that type of work, which the technology was saying could solve? And no one knew. If you don't know that, if you don't start to understand the foundation of the house, of the hotel first, right? I don't think you're going to be successful. You've got to understand, at least at a basic level, what it is we're being asked to do. And then fast forward to where we are today. Our general counsel sends out a weekend email every week, and it's a summary of all the great work that that he sees going on across the organization. It's like a thank you to the team. He doesn't have to reach out to practice group leaders to get that information. It's all in his GC dashboard. He can see what folks are working on and the amazing value we're bringing. And then lastly, when he's in the C-suite meeting, or when our practice group leaders, or when I'm in operational meetings, and we hear things like legal are a bottleneck, it's being slowed down by legal, we can actually say, well, actually, no, I can show you it's not legal, or yeah, you're right, it is legal, and let me go and help unblock that kind of the blocker. So extremely powerful. Like, data is undoubtedly the new oil in the world, like no doubt about it.
And Tom, I would add to that if I may, just to say, look, it's not a solution in itself, right? What it is it gives you all the tools for the right conversations, right? So often people will say, look, once we've implemented this, then actually life gets better around that. Actually, what we've found is it's highlighting all sorts of things for us to have the follow-up conversation. We get a bunch of stuff that's not legal work. Why do we do that? Actually, can we educate our business, or can we just push back, or can we say no? Are we too nice and friendly? Or actually, no, there's a disconnect on the business side from what the senior business person thinks we do versus what we're actually getting on a day-to-day basis, or when somebody asks us to get a second opinion, or things like that. That disconnect is really useful. So being able to then, as Andy described, put the data on the table to say, this is what it's showing us. Now let's talk about some options, and let's talk about the dialogue off the back of it. I think it's really, really interesting.
Yeah, and Alexander, thanks for the extra question. And Andy, did you want to pick that one up?
Yeah, 2 questions in the chat, which I think are actually relevant to this point of the conversation. So the Alexander's question around can you spend more time on the actual, on the how and how it works in the back end? Yes. So the initial kind of scope and deployment was driven by legal operations. Yes, you need a DT or IT, we call it DT at ServiceNow, IT team to help you deploy the technology. Once it's deployed and once you get to a fairly mature state, you might want to have legal operations folks with the kind of IT experience in your team. It's really up to you. The way that we route work, specifically your question around how does it work on the back end? Is it lawyers? Is it not lawyers? We have a legal team, a legal operations team. We have certain workflows which requests are automatically routed to the relevant legal professional who does the work. We have some workflows which come to a centralized place for a triage first. But a lot of our work goes automatically based on the logic we've built in the system. So hopefully that helps.
And Andy, I'd add to that to say, and that's completely your choice, right? As in, so us here, we choose what type of query type is an auto route to a certain group, what type of query type goes directly to a lawyer. So actually, based on those rules, you can make whichever logical decisions you want and build it in that way.
Really, really good point, Ben. Like, really important clarification, right? It's up to you. You can configure, you can customize how you see fit to, Ben and I use the system in different ways. Ben's working at a financial services company. I'm working at a technology company. Absolutely configurable. Yes.
And one other thing we see in some implementations is looking at how work is routed to third parties. There's obviously focus on controlling external spend. You can, at the point of intake, start to triage and automatically assess and see what should maybe route direct through to a third party. So you've got the sort of, it could be internal lawyers, your shared services and external parties all sort of plugged into the same front end. I suppose, Ben, sort of summarising some of what you've learned on the sort of recent experience for HSB, anything else you'd call out?
Yeah, so obviously I've majored a lot of my conversation around the enterprise-wide approach. And what's been interesting when yourself, Tom, and myself and Andy a bit sort of been chatting a lot about these type of topics, it's actually been so from an organisation like HSBC, utilising enterprise-wide technology and taking an approach which is very specific to legal, but utilising that. What it really does as well is we've seen the added benefit of our sphere of influence within the firm grow. So rather than everything we do looking at legal tech and looking at it in isolation and therefore operating within our house and influencing only the future of our house, actually sitting at bigger tables and being able to influence technology decisions for the firm. Now, and I'm not playing down what we do, or if it was just the house, but that ability, that being part of a broader conversation, it really helps, because if you think about the future, not just now, but you think about the future, where do you want to get to? There will be a time when surely you want everybody super connected in one sort of web within your firm. And so actually being right at the forefront of those conversations about how you would do that, and starting to talk to your businesses about do we want a front end where they operate, because we assume our businesses know when to come to legal. And so the point is, you get to a point where when you're talking Gen AI, when you're talking about future tech, that actually being a part of the enterprise-wide solution gives you a real ability to have an influence of sphere of influence. I probably hadn't thought about that when I first started out, but I've seen that in motion, and actually it puts us in a really, really good position, and it helps our board members when they're sitting at board as well, because they're talking the same language as everyone else as well. So there's definitely a point there, Tom, which maybe we didn't start out thinking would be a benefit, but have learned along the way.
Yeah, sort of front foot engagement with legal rather than being reactive. And look, we've got some good questions coming through, so we'll just weave them in. I don't know, Andy, some of these you're putting your hand up for, dive in.
Yeah, so there was a question I think that actually got me to answer around or maybe a statement around GenAI. Similar to the question you just asked, Ben, I didn't realize how deploying LSD was going to be so important for grounding for what we want to do with the whole generative AI piece. I now realize how important that is. So real quick, our kind of initial step into the GenAI space is the LSD has contract management functionality. You have simple contracts. We have a new product called CM Pro, which can be used with the LSD. Our first kind of generative AI, kind of test, if you like, is around assisted review for contracts. So real quick, contract comes in or a statement comes in, it's been redlined, there's been proposals made by the other party. Instead of a human doing the first review is done by the technology. It recognizes there's a red line and it proposes a response based on your accepted positions. That is not in production yet. We have a big knowledge event and clock in May where we're going to be showing what we've done so far, but that's really exciting. I'll hit two questions. Do we provide onboarding and training for in-house teams? We do. We have an entire kind of product team, which Sharaf is part of. We have a solution consultants team who help customers deploy things successfully. And Andrea, I'm happy as customer zero to spend time with you or any of your teams to talk more about that. So yes, we do support folks in that way. And then really quickly, and I'll stop, Whitney's question around how does the how can the LSD provide a seamless experience between legal partners and their business clients within a larger legal department? Whitney, this is what the LSD is all about. Such a great question. It's all about you have different kind of components of the LSD. It's the front door, the intake, and then it's the legal professional who works in what we call legal counsel center. You have the ability to collaborate on requests and matters. You can add watchers. You can have conversations. You can amend documents and track it between each other. There is a whole part that I think would love to see, and we should get you a full demonstration because it's very powerful for that collaboration piece. Tom.
I suppose just pick up on the Gen AI point. I think it's right. The foundation is absolutely key. I think more and more, whilst we have the sort of furore around Gen AI and the hype, we'll see its true application, practical and pragmatic, as part of existing tools. It will just turbocharge and enable those rather than as more standalone proofs of concept that we're seeing at the moment. I don't know, Ben, I know you as a sort of, aficionado technology would be looking at GenAI. Do you have a perspective on that?
I do. What I think is really interesting, Tom, is when I look at so GenAI, right? No, let me take a step back. AI has been around for years, right? And so I've seen lots of use cases, often in standalone rather than embedded. So whether it's maybe a regulatory contract renegotiation, right? There's some real strong use cases to use it to remove a lot of the manual element, right? And so I've seen that used to varying degrees of success. Some not so, some well done, etc. What I would say is that the way that we're thinking about it, the way we talk with other people about it, is GenAI will undoubtedly become an extra tool in the box, right? As opposed to like wiping everything out, right? We're not looking at it at the moment as a tool that will say it's going to automate everything we do, right? Because that would presuppose that everything we do is possible to automate. Whereas actually, I think that what we want to do is assist humans in some of the decision makings, right? And this is real time thinking, not absolutely locked down. But what I'd say is that then you think about it in the theoretical sense and say we're going to add it to our toolbox, right? So as an organization, we'll investigate, we'll look at it more, we'll look at how we do it, we look at how we partner with people to do it, etc. But then when you then start to say, well, where would we look at it? In all the use cases that I start to see then come across my desk, I kind of sit there and go, do you know what? If we had a knockout contract management system, if you have a awesome workflow, if you did some process optimization, you'd remove all of that, right now and actually we could go a long way to fixing use cases before we need to get to GenAI, right? And so I'm not there's absolutely a place for it. It's absolutely going to be a part of the toolkit, but where a lot of the debates I join around GenAI tend to start in contract management discussions. And actually, when you talk to people, that's because they have a problem with contract management. They're not in an optimal contract management position to start with, and then talk about GenAI beyond that. So I absolutely think there's a place for it, Tom, and we are looking at it, investigating. However, it's an additional tool to some other great tools.
Yeah, it's the cherry on the cake. But the cake's quite important. Just basic AI and process and common standards get you an awful long way. Andy, your comment on redlining has generated some interest. Do you want to elaborate? There are a few questions in there.
Yeah, for sure. I just to reiterate, I agree wholeheartedly with what Ben was saying, right? AI has been around for a while. And I think this is why we're so excited about the LSD as a platform play. The legal services delivery is not a point solution. Okay, it's a whole platform that is in a certain position now, and in 1 year's time and in 2 years' time, it's going to be even better. And so platform play, not a point solution. Yes. So okay, just Cindy's question, great question. This is a POC that we're doing. Okay, it's not in production yet. We're planning on using it for May, and we're planning on showing our progress in May at the Knowledge and Anna Clock. The way it works is we're using a large language model, and the large language model is being fine-tuned to give responses based on our playbook. So what Cindy raises is spot on. It's around playbook which captures our acceptable positions. Cindy, we're not yet at the stage where the automatic updating of the playbook, we're not there yet. We need to fine-tune it first so that we're comfortable with the responses that it's giving based on the playbook. And so, like I said, work in progress, and happy to talk more about that. But hopefully that helps.
Maybe just picking up one, Jason's made a point that I talked about with him recently, and Jason, I hope you don't mind me referencing that you work at Royal Mail and were one of the first implementers and users of the solution. And I think Jason's point is that they tied the sort of knowledge articles to the form intakes and did some analysis on, well, what's the value we're getting from the effort we invest in creating knowledge articles? And the quite startling fact is that 90% of people who reviewed knowledge articles did not then go on to submit a request, which just gives some sense to the way LSD actually drives a real return on investment in that knowledge, which often languishes in, not necessarily drawers, but file shares and isn't really used. So that's incredibly powerful. And thank you for mentioning it.
Tom, can I piggyback on that? Thanks, Jason. That's such a good point. And like, what an amazing, when people say, hey, how much does the license cost? How much is the cost of this platform? Wow, 90% of folks looking at those knowledge articles then did not need to engage legal. That's a huge cost saving, huge value statement. Jason, we did something similar, not exactly the same, but we had a certain area of the team that by deploying the LSD, we were able to deflect over 30%, 30% of work that was going to a certain part of legal that did not need legal engagement. Not quite the same as just go and read the kind of the knowledge article. It was more of a deflection to use certain standard positions and maybe to engage with parts of the organization. But I mean, huge value driver, right, Tom? Like that's where you get your money back for sure.
It takes a while, and I'm sure, Ben, you haven't deflected 30% of requests straight out the gate, but the power is there, and it's an iterative process.
It is, and there's also I touched on the cultural piece, right? There's a cultural acceptance around loading knowledge items as well, right? Which is people are nervous. People are nervous about providing something where if there isn't a human touch point and you can just get an answer. And I think that comes in time. Right? Yeah, as people start to see that. So actually, if you are providing the same template 10 times a day, and then put the template in the knowledge, but it's not always been the way that people operate, and so you can't change that overnight. So over time and encouragement, that gets better. And actually, and I'm sure actually it was about April last year. I saw Jason talk about Royal Mail's deployment, which actually was really, really helpful in us making our final decision. So thank you, Jason. And I'm hoping then this a year further on, I'll be quoting 90% as well.
Fabulous. Well, look, I'm conscious we're running close on time. I suppose looking ahead, Andy, what's the vision for LSD?
So the vision and the kind of the mission is for us to, okay, real quick story. Last summer, so I'm from the UK originally, but I've lived in the US for nearly almost 8 years now. And last summer came back to the UK and Europe and spent a lot of time with customers and really listened to what folks needed from a platform like the LSD. And it was amazing. And the all kind of common theme was having to buy separate point solutions is an absolute killer for an organization, especially for legal, because we're so constrained budget-wise. So the vision for us is that we're going to provide a more complete ecosystem, a more complete solution for request, matter management, contracting. Yes, we're not going to necessarily go into e-discovery at a huge scale and things like that, but LSD is absolutely a more complete solution. And so that's the vision. I think we're already well on the way there, adding the kind of AI component. So it's the platform play, Tom. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
And I think, it ties perfectly with themes we see in the sort of ask for clients and the sort of 20-year history of legal tech that's created this crazy spider diagram that they're trying to manage now of point solutions. There's actually real cost saving potential just in that rationalization. Yes, better adoption. Yes, more consistent user experience, but real saving. Ben, any comment on that? And then a last question to you would be, what's your plan for LSD over the next 18 months or so?
Yeah, I mean, nothing extra to add on that, but I would just touch very briefly on our next steps. Really, in the immediate, it's the breadth. So the more we can get going through what we refer to as Ask Legal. The more we can get going through Ask Legal, the better we can get out of the back of it, and the better use cases. And we see our business partners who are using it feeding back positivity, and so it breeds and it gets bigger. So our immediate over the course of 2024 is increased breadth of usage, and then beyond that, and I won't go into it because we talked about it earlier, but it's that ecosystem. It's about the user experience, and all the learnings that we have from more and more people using it will teach us which direction it goes in the future.
And just briefly, thanks, Ben. We've got one more question, and if we answer this, then we've got a full house. Lashmi, thank you for that. The question is, what use cases have been solved? And I think I've seen hundreds of different use cases solved across legal. What you've got in LSD is a very flexible tool set that out of the box has some standard workflows and can be configured very, very simply to address the needs. Every legal function is different, is the reality right now. They will gradually consolidate in terms of common themes, but I think right now, a lot of difference, and you've got a flexible tool that supports that. Shafath, there's your 2 minutes back just to wrap us up.
Great. Thank you very much for all your great insights, and love to see all these great questions come in. Just to wrap up in 2 minutes, we have a number of resources for you. The links are in the chat window for you to download these. We have a white paper that ServiceNow and Deloitte collaborated on how do you actually create a modern legal team and really focused around legal operations. There's a Gartner report, as well as a link to the product page on ServiceNow.com. We also have another upcoming webinar. Andy gave some great insights about how we're doing it in ServiceNow. Here's an entire webinar coming up on how we did it, how ServiceNow's legal team actually transformed using legal service delivery. That is on April 25th. A link is in the chat window, and you can go ahead and register for that. And of course, we have our amazing Knowledge 24 conference happening in Las Vegas, May 7th through the 9th. It's an amazing event, over 500 sessions, thousands of ServiceNow customers. Highly recommend you come and attend Knowledge 24 if possible. And with that, looks like we've already reached our time. And thank you very much for all the speakers. Thank you to all of the guests that attended. And this recording will be available on the link in the chat window.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, guys.